Hey, it's Adam with Make. Did you know that on the Casper network, you can associate other keys to your account to create multi-signature deploys? I want to take a couple of minutes and teach you all about it. And I'm going to go through a demo of how you can actually do this yourself on CSPR.live. So first, let's just explain the core concept of what associating keys actually means and how a multi-sig deploy works. So step one, you have your primary account, whatever account you want to associate the keys to. You're going to associate the keys to that account. You're going to give each key a signing weight. You're going to set a deploy threshold. And then it's fairly straightforward from there. The sum of the signing key weight must be equal to or greater than the deploy threshold that you set in order for that deploy to be successful. If it falls short, the deploy is rejected. If it meets that requirement or exceeds it, the deploy is successful, okay? And just know that deploys that change the associated key configuration, so if you're like modifying the weights, for example, or adding or removing keys, they have their own threshold that you can set. And you can configure that as well in CSPR.live, and I'm going to show you how to do that. Other couple quick things to point out, just know that by default, every newly created account is associated to itself with a signing weight of 1, and both deploy and key management thresholds are also 1 by default. And this configuration basically allows accounts to create and sign deploys on behalf of themselves, which also includes changing the associated key configuration, which is what we're going to do in the demo. Okay, so from here, let's go ahead and jump into the demo. We're going to go to CSPR.live, and I've got an account connected here. I'm going to do this on testnet, and let's go to the account page first. And so this is a brand new account that I created for this demo. By default, you're not going to see any associated keys listed here, but after I go through the associated keys flow, you'll actually see an updated display where the associated keys and the weights will be listed. So I'll come back and show that after we do it. But for now, let's go ahead and go to the associated keys option here in the menu. There's going to be a few terms listed. The terms that I mentioned earlier, there's some definitions. Do take some time to just familiarize yourself with this because, if you make a mistake here, you could potentially permanently lose access to an account. We don't want that to happen. Just make sure you're generally familiar with how this associated keys and multi-sig deploy functionality works before you start playing around with it. And again, that's what testnet's for, right? So you can explore on testnet before you make the change on mainnet. So let's go ahead and go to manage associated keys. Of course, make sure that you've got some funds in your account. You can use Faucet for that on CSPR.live. Okay, so there we go. All right, so let's go to associated keys. And this is a new feature on CSPR.live where you can configure associated keys. You can set the key management threshold. You can set the deploy execution threshold that I mentioned earlier. And down here is where you can actually add associated keys and configure the weights. So here you can see the default thresholds are set at 1 and 1. Also notice that you have one associated key already, right, which is the same as the primary account, right? So I mentioned that earlier. And you can also see the balance right here. So let's go ahead and add a couple keys and associate them to this managed account. So I've got a couple other keys that I've already created that I own, and I'm going to add them down here. Notice that the balance is displayed. And this just helps you to make sure that you can identify the account that you actually want to add. You don't want to add the wrong key here and make a misstep here. So just be very careful that you're adding the keys that you actually want to associate to this managed account. I'm going to go ahead and add 2. And then there it is. Okay, so now I just keep in mind I haven't actually added these yet. I will have to sign a deploy in order to kind of make this official. But let's talk about a couple of other things that are happening on this page first. So what happens if I increase the deploy submission threshold now? Let's say I want a combined weight of 3 in order for a deploy to be successful. Well, there's going to be an error that displays, and that's because there's a requirement that the deploy submission threshold cannot be greater than the key management threshold, right? So in order to fix this error, I have to change this to at least a 3 or greater, okay? So I'm going to change both of these to 2 because I have 2 keys with the weight of 1. Let's check one more thing. Now, what happens when I actually remove my own account from the associated key position? Let's go ahead and do that. So I've got 2 keys, each with a weight of 1, so I meet the threshold requirement. But what if I increase the threshold to 3? Look at what happens here. The value of the threshold is now higher than the cumulative weight of the associated keys. So I just want to demonstrate that right now I only have 2 keys, each with a weight of 1. And so this would be problematic because and I actually can't sign these deploys based on this configuration, right? I don't have enough weight. So I want to drop this down to 2 because the combined weight of my signing keys is 2. And now look what happens, the error goes away, okay? So let's go ahead and continue on. Here's the confirm and sign screen. It's basically just showing you a summary of the changes that you're requesting. You can see I've added 2 associated keys to this managed account. I'm setting a key management threshold of 2 and a deploy submission threshold of 2. I'm also removing an associated key. So it will lose its signing rights, right? So very important, make sure you're paying attention to these changes before you actually sign this key management deploy. So you're sure you're making that change. So there's a small transaction fee here too. I'm going to go ahead and sign this with Casper Wallet. So the deploy has been successfully submitted, and it'll take maybe 20 seconds or so for this deploy to finish. I'm going to go back to view this account page. And what will happen is once the deploy completes, I will actually be able to see the associated keys right here on this page. And so here we go. So open this up. Yep, and you can see deploy submission. So you can see the key management threshold is listed here. You've got the 2 associated keys listed with each with a weight of 1. So all the information you need is right here. Okay, so now let's make a multi-signature transfer on behalf of this managed account. So this is where it kind of gets interesting. Let's go into Wallet and say we want to transfer some CSPR out of this managed account. So take a look at this. So my signing weight is 0 right now, right? I can't make a transfer now with this account anymore because remember, I removed myself as an associated key. So what I'm going to have to do is I'm going to need to use one of those other keys with a signing weight to actually make this transfer happen. So let's switch to one of those associated keys. I'm going to connect that to Casper.live. Okay, so now I'm on the transfer screen with this associated key. And I'm going to click this button here to create a transfer on behalf of the managed account. So I'll go ahead and click that. And what I'm going to do is I'm going to enter that managed account into this field here. This is the account that has the funds that I want to transfer, okay? All right, there it is. And remember, this managed account actually can't sign its own transaction anymore, its own deploy to transfer these funds out. It requires the associated keys to sign it now. So I'm going to go ahead and I'm going to put that in there, and then I'm going to add a recipient. Let's say just for the recipient, I'm going to just go ahead and add the associated key as the recipient. I'm going to send 10 CSPR. Okay, let's go to next. Okay, so now you can see I'm taking money out of that managed account and I'm giving it to one of these other keys that I happen to own. I'm going to hit confirm and transfer. Okay. Now this is interesting. So take a look at this. My signature alone for this one key will not add enough weight to submit this deploy to the network. Remember, each of the associated keys have a weight of 1 and the deploy threshold is 2. So signing with just one key will not be enough. I have to sign with both keys. So I'm going to go ahead and sign with key number 1. We can see that this signature was successful, so that's great. And now here's a link. So if somebody else owns that second key, I can send them this link and then they have everything that they need to actually sign with the other key. And so I'm going to go ahead and actually just switch to the second associated key. Make sure that's connected to CSPR.live, and I'm going to go to that link. And there's a helpful message here that basically just confirms that with this signature, I'm adding enough weight to make the deploy successful. So this is basically the missing signature that we need for this deploy to go through. We've already collected one signature, so that was just the account or the key that I just used, and now I'm going to sign with the second key. So at this point, the deploy should be successful because both keys have signed, each with a signing weight of 1. So the deploy threshold is 2, remember, so that meets the minimum requirement. So once the deploy is executed, we can expect to see 2 signatures on this deploy, and we can actually check that in the raw data on the transfer details page. Open up the raw data. And here you can see under approvals, you've got right there both keys, both signatures. And something that's great about this feature is any deploy on CSPR.live, whether it's undelegation, delegation, or a transfer, all of these support multisig deploys in all of these flows. So if you go over to delegate, for example, create a delegation on behalf of another account, you just click that link, just like we did in the transfer flow, okay? So overall, protocol level multisig support is just a very powerful functionality. The Casper network makes it a perfect blockchain for just use cases that require especially advanced security or multiple ownership. I hope this was helpful, and thanks for watching.